Hello again and welcome everyone to our Agile Boston podcast. I am with someone that I know you don't need any introduction to, but I'll try anyway. The co-creator of Scrum, the creator of Scrum at Scale, the founder of Scrum Inc., one of the original signatories of the Agile Manifesto, Dr. Jeff Sutherland. Jeff, it's a real pleasure to have you here today.
It's great to be here, Joe, and lots of stuff to talk about.
So Jeff, a lot of changes have been happening in the world, and a lot of changes have been happening in the agile world over the past years or even months. And I think one of the biggest impacts to not just agility but to our world in general has been the inception of AI. And how has that, in your opinion, really impacted the agile world specifically?
Well, let's go back to the latest data on AI and research papers is like 2022, okay, which shows about a 40% increase in productivity. That's about the time I started my new book, First Principles in Scrum, where I go back to physics. Okay, why do we need to be agile? Because the universe is unpredictable. You cannot even predict. There's a physical principle called computational irreducibility that says you need infinite computing power to predict even the date of completion of a project. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because the universe is unpredictable, the whole evolution of biology and the human brain has been in rapid simulation, trying something out, trying something new, constantly revising the way you're working. Those that could adapt most quickly, those biological organisms that could adapt most quickly survived, and the rest are dead, okay? So all of this now leads us into the whole realm of doing product development projects and stuff like that, and trying to control the uncontrollable, to estimate the unestimable. And the whole reason for agility is to actually go back to the fundamental principles of physics and respond to the universe. So I started this book, and my commitment was every sprint we're going to get a new chapter. And I'm on chapter 40 right now, I'm working on. And I've been working with the AI as it's gone along, and I've actually witnessed the AI improving 10x every 6 months.
Wow.
ChatGPT 4.0 came out like last week. It was an unbelievable 10x improvement. And so everything I've been doing in the book leading up through where does Agile come from, complex adaptive systems, robotics, all of this leads into that basically AI is in the middle of revolutionizing the world, and from our point of view as Scrum people, significant altering the job market. So this past year, Microsoft laid off 12% of their workforce, and they hired 80% of those people back, but only with AI skills. And I talked to a lot of management, senior management in companies, and I'm saying, guys, you need to do something about AI. And they say, we don't know what to do. Our customers have no strategy. And I tell them, Microsoft laid off 12% of people that didn't know AI, and they hired back people that did. That is your strategy. And if you don't do that, and you are a consultancy, Microsoft's going to be 30 to 100 times faster by 2030. And if you don't go along that road with them, you're going to have a really hard problem in the business world. And we've already seen big companies, like Microsoft, like Facebook, Dell, one of the companies we work with, they've laid off 10,000 people at a time.
Wow.
And if you do the analysis, as I have done with the book on, okay, how does that impact the Agile workforce? About 15% of those layoffs are consistently Agile people, coaches, Scrum Masters, not so much product owners, but, the Agile community is feeling the pressure, right? That's why you're saying, as we come in to give thanks for Scrum this
Right.
fall, we want to talk about that, right?
Yes, that's our theme. Absolutely. That's and if you're a Scrum Master or a coach out there, um, what are your alternatives? Like, what are your options? I know for myself, I was a coach at Microsoft. I was a coach in my prior company that got acquired by Microsoft. But when I went into Microsoft, there were no coaches. And yes, there were some Scrum teams and Scrum Masters, but it was really a transition for myself as well. I went into program management, and I tell my colleagues all the time, I actually like it because I can still use all of the principles of agility and all of the ideas of Scrum, but I do it without mentioning Agile or Scrum. I do it by
Right.
helping solve problems
Yeah.
using those things. Is that one way that we could adapt or to that?
Okay, so a lot of people are saying, well, is Agile dead? Is Scrum irrelevant? I'm saying Scrum was benchmarked at 10 times faster than traditional development in 1993. Those people that do it well are going 10 times faster. Now, if you add AI into the mix and compare the people not doing Scrum to the people doing Scrum plus AI, the people doing Scrum plus AI are going to be 10 times faster than the people not having an Agile process, right?
Yep.
So the big question, though, is how do we get started? That's what people are asking me. So I'm going back to actually back in 1990 in Cambridge at 238 Broadway. 238 Broadway was a famous building because the first major AI company started there, Symbolics. They built the first commercial list machines. And so when I was asked to start up a company called Object Databases, I immediately moved it to Cambridge and I rented the space, the old Symbolic space at 238 Broadway. And the reason is I've been working with AI object databases written in Lisp, okay? Shortly after I started up the company there, a team from the MIT AI lab came over one day and they said, we're starting a new company. It's going to be called iRobot, and we need some space. You have some lab space. Can we rent it from you? So I said, sure. So for the next 2 or 3 years, iRobot was building these autonomous robots right in my company, right? And about every other day, I'd wander in my office trying to hunt me down with their infrared heat-seeking sensors.
Luckily, they didn't
so
have laser beams.
so I learned a lot about what Professor Rodney Brooks, the senior professor at MIT that had co-founded the company with these guys, about the subsumption architecture, because the robot had a chip in every leg. It knew how to move a leg, a chip in the spine that could coordinate the legs, and then a neural network chip in the head that out what to do. And when you started the robot up, it had no data. It was just lying on the floor with its legs like an octopus. And you flip the switch on, and all of a sudden it starts rolling around. It gets upright. It starts moving around the room, bumping into things. And within 2 or 3 minutes, it's running around the room. And it's amazing because the robot walk for the first time every time you turn it on. So we used to have happy hour on Fridays, and all the robot people would be with my database people. And I asked Professor Brooks one Friday, I said, these simple rules are used for the robots. I bet if we use them for development teams, we could boot up a super fast development team really fast. And I asked him, I said, do you think that would work? And he said, I don't know. Why don't you try it? So I did. It's called Scrum. So, a major force in creating Scrum comes out of the AI community. And so Scrum is really built, you could look at it as built by AI for AI.
Mm-hmm.
And the way we need to introduce AI into Scrum is the same way we think about the autonomous robots that the iRobot guys were building. Okay, we want to push everything down to as low a level as possible, right? Get the decisions made at the lowest possible level and have components that are autonomous, self-organizing components that are making those decisions at the lowest level. And then the whole system is set up like a biological system, like your body has systems that have service level agreements with other parts of your body, right? So if you start running out of oxygen, your heart is automatically going to start pumping faster because there's an API there that makes that happen, whether you want it or not, right? It's like automatic. And so what we need to do with Scrum is to take every piece of Scrum, the 3 roles, the 5 events, the 3 artifacts, and we need to create a subsumption architecture where we push whatever we can down to the AI. So one of the examples I'm doing tomorrow in the German workshop is, let's take sprint planning. What is sprint planning? Okay, well, sprint planning, we need to take a look at the product backlog, and we need to pull the top of the backlog into the sprint. And we need to make sure that everything is ready, it's estimated. Well, we have found that AI can pull those stories. It can make the stories better so that the user understands them better. It can create acceptance tests, and it can look at the overall definition of done, and it can do all that in seconds and give you a much better backlog than you will normally have. And then I've had I work with 2 Scrum teams every day. I've had my global web team doing tests to see, okay, can ChatGPT estimate better than the team? And what we found is that Chat can estimate as good as the team and about 100 times faster.
In a single iteration or
So,
multiple prompts?
What's that?
In a single prompt or through multiple prompts?
Okay, so what you have to do is create your own GPT, right? So I had the team create your own GPT, go to OpenAI. You used to have to have a subscription, but now they're making these GPTs free. Then you're going to say, okay, this AI is for estimation, and here's some documents that are important to know about for estimation. We found it would not work unless the red book, Scrum, out of doing twice the work in half the time, was put into the GPT. Chat does not know how to do Scrum because it's trained on the internet. And on the internet, 58% of Scrum teams are late, they're over budget, they have unhappy customers, and Chat has all that crap in its knowledge base, okay? So it was only when they put the red book in the GPT that it actually could start estimating right. It would create a buffer based on yesterday's weather of interrupts. It would look at yesterday's weather for we had to put about 3 months of Jira into the GPT. So we're constantly throwing the Jira stuff into the GPT. So, and we also had the advantage that we use Otter AI in our meetings, and we just fed all the transcripts from our meetings into chat as well. So it knows the team, it knows the history, and it remembers the history better than humans. Like you can't remember 6 months ago what you did in a sprint, right?
Mm-hmm.
Chat remembers. It remembers who did it. It remembers what stories were problems.
Right.
And because it remembers all that, it can do a really good analysis of estimating your current sprint. So we want to move to a lower level in the system where the AI is pulling from the product backlog, refining the stories, estimating the stories, selecting the stories that go into the sprint, and then created suggestions for a sprint goal, which the team can then review, agree with the AI on the sprint goal, and the AI lays out the whole sprint, and then the team can say yes or no. Team say yes, the AI starts the sprint. That can all be done in minutes.
So essentially what you're
So,
saying is create a co-pilot for your Scrum teams.
right. So what I am trying to do is take every piece of Scrum and offload 90% of the work to the AI, which it can do in seconds or minutes. And that frees up, people have been complaining about Scrum meetings for years. Well, guess what?
Yeah.
The meetings are going to get really short
If you use AI,
because
absolutely.
the AI is going to use them.
And
Now,
and as far as feeding data into it, like for estimation, for example, you would probably have to feed in past estimation results, accuracy, and so forth, so it can learn. As it's just like a
yeah,
team can learn.
what we did was we actually have a little slide shows you exactly how to do it. Here's what you do in Jira. Here's the menus. Here's how you do a dump. Here's how you put it in chat. So you have all the past data. I said what we want to know. Let's have chat estimate based on past data, and let's do our own estimates. And then at the end of the sprint, let's re-estimate and see who's better, chat, us, or compared to reality, right? And in the initial phases with ChatGPT, well, ChatGPT 3.5 was not worth wasting time with. I never found it useful. ChatGPT 4 became useful because it was 10 times better than 3.5.
Right.
And it's continuously improved, and 4.0 is 10 times better than 4. So
Yeah.
what happened was 4, we got within about 3 to 6% of the human estimates, which in story point world, that's close
pretty
enough.
good.
I mean,
Yeah.
you probably couldn't get any statistical significance in the
That's right.
difference.
Right.
And with ChatGPT 4.0, it took it from 3 to 6% down to 1 to 3%,
So you're pretty
double
much
the
there.
accuracy.
You're pretty much there at that point.
Yeah. So I've told the team, we're not going to estimate anymore because chat does it basically for free, and it's just as good as we are. And it's just a waste of time for us to do stuff that we don't need to be doing, right?
Right. And I think teams
Um,
would like it a lot more because they're spending more time doing their work, which is what they want.
right, right.
Yeah. And you said that you have a slide or a worksheet available for teams to look at. How would they get that?
Yeah, I'm doing a workshop tomorrow. I have a slide deck going through first principles of Scrum leading up into AI, pointing out that by 2030, teams are going to be 30 to 100 times faster. And so we need a plan that will enable Scrum Masters to build teams that are at least 30 times faster by 2030. And if they don't do that, they will be unemployed. That's the problem that people have to face up to. This is not optional. You know, there's a lot of things optional in Agile, but getting 30 times faster is not optional.
Because companies are doing it. And if you want to compete, you got to stay up with it.
Yeah. I mean, people have a hard time. I say, okay, Microsoft created Copilot and it generates 80% of the code. So now a developer is 5 times productive, right?
Mm.
So, okay, Mr. Scrum Master, put your manager's hat on. Okay, I'm a manager and I have these guys with Copilot. They do 5 times much stuff. They do it 5 times faster. And I have this other team over here that doesn't use Copilot, and they're 5 times slower. As a manager, what am I going to do?
If you're a good manager,
I'm going to lay off the slow team, right? Either that or train them in AI. I'm going to tell them
hopefully
it
they
is
train them
not
in-
optional. It's not optional for you to be 5 times faster. Either you are 5 times faster like the Copilot team, or you are going to be looking for another job. That's what the Agile community needs to face up to.
right.
You know, for so many years, people have been complaining, Jeff, don't talk about twice the work and half the time, puts too much pressure on the developers. I'm like, people, this is about having a job. Now we set it up in Scrum, so it's not about pressure. It's about actually being smart in the way you work.
Work smarter, not harder, right?
Yeah. And in this case, we're going to let AI do all the heavy lifting, right? It's actually going to be easier for us.
That's right.
But we need to build that subsumption architecture. And the APIs for Scrum, a lot of it will be prompt engineering, will be the API creation, right? You're
Right.
going to generate prompts for AI, and there'll be multiple AIs, not just one, to really make this all work. And what's emerging right now is, you know, the kind of the next step with AI is to actually enable it to run your computer. So it's not going to be just generating text. You're going to say, hey, go
Right.
do this, and it will.
Well, I just gave that example to my son the other day. He was working on a little, he's just getting introduced to programming. And he asked me, Dad, how do I do this particular problem? And I looked at it and I said, let's do it in GTP4. And he goes, well, I can't do it. I'm like, well, let's just see what it would do. And literally, I gave it the problem. It wrote the code in 30 seconds. I literally had to make one change to it and it was working. And
Absolutely.
and that's the world we live in. I mean, as a program
Yeah.
manager and meetings and so forth, I have Copilot right there, basically summarizing on the spot what's been talked about, who owns what action items. So I don't have to do that anymore. You know,
Yeah.
it's permeating every part of our life, whether
Yeah.
education, whether in our jobs as program managers, it's in healthcare. It's happening very rapidly.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't it happen
So,
in Agile too?
yeah. Yeah. It's you know, the problem is there's a lot of new jobs being created by AI. This is typically what happens, but the jobs are going to be different. So what people need to register is the job you're doing now is not going to exist. So what are you going to do? Right.
Yeah, that's right.
And your job in the future, at least if you're with a Scrum team, is going to be enabling AI to really leverage that team so that it's way on where people are today. That coding example is perfect because I actually do a bunch of coding now. I used to be a developer for years, but I pretty much stopped doing development when I started doing all the running companies and running around the world doing stuff because I didn't have time.
Sure.
But now I have time because in 30 seconds, it will write a program for me and with a minor amount of debugging. And so anytime I need a new tool for my health company, I just whip it up and I can whip it up in any language I want. I'm mainly gravitated towards, it seems to write Python better than other languages or faster and better, although
Yeah, Python,
Python
JavaScript, it
is a
does
bit
well.
annoying, but
Yeah.
it,
What's really
it
cool about it is not only will it write the code, but it will debug it for you too. if you
Yeah.
tell it this doesn't work and here's why, it will say, oh, just do this.
And with ChatGPT 4.0, it will, I can say to it, I want you to run code in your environment. I'm going to debug in your environment, so I don't have to go back and forth in mine. And so now it will do everything internally. It'll write the code, it'll run the code, it'll debug the code.
Oh
And then
boy.
only then do you put it into your own IDE for
Yeah, to use.
distribution.
That's right. That's amazing. Well, Jeff, thank you so much. So is this going to be an upcoming chapter in your book, you think, from the presentation you give tomorrow? Where can people get this information, you think?
Well, you go to leanpub.com/first principles in Scrum, all one word.
Okay.
And it's a good thing to get signed up for the book because every week or two there's a new chapter and like you automatically get updates. We are at the point right now where Amazon and others have told us, the average book has 11 chapters and you got 40 chapters. It's
You're on
getting
volume
too
4.
big. We don't want to make any more paper books of 1,000 pages. You've got to break it up.
You're on volume
So
4, man. That's what
yeah, but so we're in the midst of splitting it into 3 volumes now.
Oh,
But
okay.
there'll be a new chapter every week or two. The latest one is a fascinating one about the building of the dome in Florence back in like the 1400s
Wow.
by this guy who was really an agile scrum master, the way he worked. And an Italian guy who lives in Florence had written a paper about him and about how similar what he did was to Scrum. And that was an inspiration for this new and latest chapter that I'm writing.
Awesome.
And one of the things I do is I put out on LinkedIn to a link to everyone for the chapter as we're working on it. So people can go on LinkedIn, search for First Principles in Scrum. You'll see my posting. Hey, come join us, and we help us write a paper on one of the world's most significant architectural achievements in Florence, Italy, and how it was done with an agile practice.
There you go.
Fascinating.
That's going to be great. Looking forward to that. And Jeff, we're gonna see you this year at 2024. Give thanks for Scrum Tuesday before Thanksgiving.
Absolutely.
And we're going to be talking more about the changes in the agile world and what we as agilists need to do to adapt and survive.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Jeff, thank you very, very much for spending time with us today. And for everyone, we'll see you next time. Take care.